The top stories tonight in Y News. Russia's COVID vaccine Sputnik V shows 95% efficacy, greater than other promising vaccines.
The government sets a price range for RT-PCR tests for COVID-19 in the country, but PhilHealth members will need to pay the excess amount for the test.
Motorists urged not to buy RFID stickers online. Thousands of public utility vehicle drivers apply in the government net service contracting scheme.
The Philippine National Police opens its security and gun license processing on weekends and holidays.
And Scotland becomes the first country to make pads and tampons free for all. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Wednesday, November 25, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news, the Russian government recently announced that its coronavirus vaccine Sputnik V shows high efficacy, which reflects a greater success rate compared to other promising vaccines. Maeve Yandog will give us the details live. Yes, Maeve?
Harleen, the head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund or RDIF, Kirill Dmitriev, advised on Tuesday that the Sputnik vaccine indicates more than 95% efficacy at 42 days after the first dose. After administering the first dose to volunteers, the second interim analysis of clinical trial data showed 91.4% efficacy on its first 28 days. Dmitriev also said during the briefing that its new preliminary data is a positive news not only for Russia but also for the entire world. The two-dose vaccine is being developed at Moscow's Gamaleya Research Institute, and according to them, the vaccine will be free of charge for Russian citizens, while it will be less than $10 per dose for international markets. The institute also claims that the vaccine will be 2 or more times cheaper than the mRNA vaccines such as Pfizer or BioNTech and Moderna candidates with similar efficacy levels. The mRNA formula found in the other candidates needs to be kept in sub-zero conditions, while Sputnik V uses adenoviral vector method, which is similar to the AstraZeneca vaccine that can be stored in a standard fridge. This condition reduces cost for the vaccine. Meanwhile, Russian officials also said that they are happy to share the country's proprietary technology, which contributes to the vaccine's greater efficacy, with British scientists. RDIF currently has agreements with foreign pharmaceutical companies for vaccine to be produced abroad for 500 million people per year starting from 2021, and that the first international deliveries will be made in January 2021. Harleen?
Maeve, you have mentioned that the Russian Direct Investment Fund has made arrangements with other countries for the production of this vaccine. Maeve, can you tell us what are the other countries' take on Russia's vaccine and which countries are interested in their vaccine?
Harleen, apparently not everyone is convinced with Russia's vaccine and the data they provided, because the vaccine has been licensed by Russian authorities before the Stage 3 trial results were made available. According to Dmitriev, RDIF already has partnerships with manufacturers in India, Brazil, South Korea, China, and 4 other countries. So far, Hungary is the only European country that expressed serious interest in Russia's vaccine. In addition to that, Philippines also expressed its interest in the shot. Back to you, Harleen.
Thank you, Maeve Yandong, reporting live from Australia. Meanwhile, the Philippine government targets to roll out its COVID-19 mass vaccination from end end of 2021 to early 2022. According to vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr., this is a realistic scenario. Meanwhile, the government has prohibited caroling in the streets for the holiday season. Rosalie Cos will tell us why live. Yes, Rosalie.
Arlene, the Philippine government is in negotiation with various vaccine developers and countries on the possible COVID-19 vaccine. It is currently in talks with 5 to 6 countries for access to vaccine supply. According to National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr., the government targets the rollout of its mass vaccination in the country in the end of 2021 or first quarter of 2022. Based on the National Vaccine Roadmap, the clinical trials of various vaccine candidates will be started in the Philippines in December 2020, and the results could be out in the first quarter of 2021.
So ang ano po natin ay best case scenario is second quarter. Ang worst case scenario o tinatawag na realistic scenario ay end of the year or early 2022.
The vaccine czar also says that it will take a year to inoculate 20 to 30 million people. So the vaccination program targeting 60 to 70 million population of Filipinos will take 3 years for completion. In December 2020, the Philippines hopes to raise the target amount of funds through various flows to procure the vaccine. Meanwhile, Secretary Galvez says the government has decided to prohibit street caroling for the holiday season. This is to prevent transmission of COVID-19.
Sabi na nga ng IATF na yung caroling talaga pong nagbabawal natin.
Arlene, the government also appeals to the public to carefully consider their celebrations for the holiday season. Arlene?
Thank you so much, Rosalie Cos, reporting live.
Meanwhile, Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon wants the Philippine International Trading Corporation, or PITC, to return its unused funds to the National Treasury and be used for the purchase of COVID-19 vaccines. This as Drilon questioned the capability of the corporation to procure the vaccines due to its supposed poor performance. According to the senator, based on the 2019 audited financial statement of the corporation, it has trust liabilities worth 33.4 billion pesos in 2019. He also questioned its significant increase from 4.8 billion in 2015. The senator also said that the PITC has billions of pesos worth of undelivered items, including fire trucks and fire stations for the Bureau of Fire Protection and firearms for the Philippine National Police.
The government is having difficulties in raising funds due to the drop in revenues. But here, you have government agencies depositing their budgets in PITC to make it appear that the funds are obligated, where in truth and in fact, it is sleeping in the coffers of PITC and interest is being earned.
The PITC is an attached agency of the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI. It has yet to comment on the matter, but DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez earlier said that there are parked funds in the PITC.
They undergo ho yung very strict na procedure. Hindi naman ho siya nagtatap-park ng pera. Yan po, naka-escrow yung pera na yan. Ngayon, kung nagpe-pay bidding, yun naman hong budget na yon ay binabalik din sa National Treasury. So, in effect, wala ho talagang natitira na pera sa PITC dahil po all are accounted for. Wala pong kontrobersya dito dahil tagabili lang po ang PITC at magmamanage ng bidding process.
Meanwhile, Senator Francis Pangilinan urges the palace to release an executive order to transfer the funds for the procurement of the vaccines. The government has set a price range for the real-time reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, or RT-PCR tests, which is dubbed as the gold standard in coronavirus testing. Meanwhile, PhilHealth members will still need to pay the excess amount for their RT-PCR test. Aiko Miguel explains why.
The Department of Health and Department of Trade and Industry have signed a joint order setting a price range for the reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, or RT-PCR test, after coordinating with laboratories. According to the DOH, government facilities are only allowed to charge 3,800 pesos for an RT-PCR test, while private laboratories and hospitals can charge from 4,500 pesos to 5,000 pesos. The price range is already inclusive of all costs associated with RT-PCR coronavirus testing. Health facilities can charge cheaper but cannot exceed the price ceiling.
Kung isipin natin, hindi pwedeng isang presyo lang eh. Kaya ginawa natin range. Meron floor, may ceiling. Itong price range na ito, evidence-based. No? Ito ay matapos nagsagawa ng malaliman at malawakan pag-aaral ng ating pong mga eksperto. At sila po ang nag-rekomenda ng price range na ito at matapos na magkaroon ng market survey and market study kung ano ba yung mga sinisingil bago itong JAO, ano ba yung singilan.
Hospitals and laboratories proven offering overpriced RT-PCR testing will be sanctioned. They will face a 15-day revocation of license to operate until 30-day suspension of license to operate and a fine of 20,000 pesos to 30,000 pesos, depending on the offense done. But Health Secretary Francisco Duque III clarified that PhilHealth members will need to pay the excess as the benefit package for COVID-19 testing cost at 3,409 pesos.
Halimbawa, kung 3,500 yung pinakamataas na singil ng PhilHealth at ang singil ng isang laboratorio 3,800. So meron ka out of pocket na 300 pesos. So ganun na mangyayari. Pero hindi ka pwede lumampas sa 3,800. Kung ginawan 10,000, tapos ang PhilHealth 3,500 lang, di 6,500 na out of pocket mo. Kaya talagang maganda na meron po tayong ganitong polisiya.
Meanwhile, the DOH is still studying whether to set price range for antigen testing. The DOH reminds laboratories that there is a law on setting price for RT-PCR testing and should not take advantage of the situation of the country. The DOH's and DTI Joint Administrative Order will take effect 15 days upon publication. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
To work abroad may now begin processing their documents after the lifting of the deployment ban that was imposed early this year due to the coronavirus disease pandemic. However, Labor Secretary Bello III noted that only 5,000 newly hired applicants will be allowed to leave the country each year. Ray Palayo will tell us why.
Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III clarified that the deployment cap for health workers are only applicable for new applicants. The government recently lifted the deployment ban for health workers but will implement a 5,000 yearly deployment cap for health workers. Bello said this is aside from the returning workers who just took a vacation in the country. The official notes that the cap may be revised depending on the approval of the Department of Health. Before the pandemic, the country deploys 12 to 16,000 health workers a year. Bello said around 90 to 95% of this number are nurses.
Ayaw lang natin na mangyari na walang limit, ang daming lalabas. Pagdating ng panahon, lumala itong pandemya at wala tayong mga nurses. Tayo naman ang kawawa.
Meanwhile, Bello wants the salary of nurses in the private sector to be as equal as those who are working in the government. The official noted that the highest salary of nurses in private is around 18,000 pesos, while the entry level in the government is already 30,000 pesos per month. Bello calls on the private hospitals to take care of their health workers.
May mga nurses pa na nagalit na silang sinusweldoan, sila pa nagbabayad under the guise of training fee.
DOLE is now pushing a bill for the salary increase of nurses in private sector. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Philippines recorded 1,202 new COVID-19 cases today, marking the 16th consecutive day that the daily tally fell below 2,000. The DOH said that the new cases pushed the nationwide tally to 422,915, wherein 27,745 are active cases or those who are still sick. Based on the latest case update, Davao City logged the highest number of new cases with 137, Quezon City with 68, Batangas with 59, Laguna with 54, and Cavite with 47. Recoveries also jumped to 386,955 with 183 new survivors. However, 31 more succumbed to COVID-19, driving the country's death toll to 8,215.
And for those watching us on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on the right side of your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook.
The installation of radio frequency identification or RFID stickers would continue even until December ends, especially for first-time toll users and new vehicles. Meanwhile, motorists are urged not to buy their stickers online. Joanano explains why.
As the Department of Transportation and Tollway operators gears up for the full implementation of the cashless transaction in all expressways starting December 1, the DOTR clarifies that this deadline is not intended for the motorists, but instead to tollway operators for them to comply to the shift to cashless transaction to combat the transmission of COVID-19. The agency assures that even after December 1, tollway operators will still proceed with the installation of RFID stickers. DOTR explains that motorists will be subject to a transition period from December 1 to January 11, 2021 to give some time to adopt with the new policy. With this, motorists with no RFID stickers until January 11 next year will not be cited for a traffic violation.
Wala pong mangyayaring hulihan mula December 1 hanggang January 11 para po dun sa mga sasakyang walang RFID. After January 11, syempre hindi na po lahat ng lane sa toll gate ay po pwedeng ma-convert bilang stickering lane. Maaari lang po silang matikitan kung sila po ay pipila dun sa mga RFID only lane, lalo na kung sila ay magdudulot po ng aberya o ng abala dun sa mga sasakyang nasa likuran nila.
Starting December 1 until January 11, 2021, the installation of RFID will be 24/7 in all toll lanes and booths. The tollway operators will also intensify the conduct of online appointment as well as designating RFID installation lanes in the toll plazas. Meanwhile, the tollway operators again remind the motorists not to purchase RFID stickers being sold online to assure that the sticker is properly installed and will be read by their system upon entering the toll gates.
We're just imposing a few more controls, no, because yung pagkakabit ng sticker by the customers themselves, we also found out medyo prone to mistakes eh. Sa dami po na klase ng sasakyan natin, meron pa ring margin of error na pagdating po sa toll lane, magkakaproblema.
On the other hand, the Toll Regulatory Board says that they are now in talks to resolve the issue on RFID interoperability so motorists don't have to avail different stickers and come up with a unified system.
Sa ngayon po, pinag-uusapan pa po yan at ititest po nung dalawang grupo para matingnan po kung meron kang EC3 RFID, hindi po siya magkakaroon ng problema sa paggamit po nun dun sa auto-ship.
Joanano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Thousands of public utility vehicle or PUV drivers will benefit from the net service contracting scheme of the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board that started today. Asher Kadapan Jr. will tell us why.
About 2,000 drivers of traditional and modern public utility jeepneys and buses went to Quezon Memorial Circle in Quezon City today. They participated in the registration for the service contracting program of the Department of Transportation and the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board. The program allows drivers and operators of PUVs to enter into transport service contracts with the government to help in easing the impact of the pandemic in the transportation sector.
Yung service contracting po, pagka sila po ay napaloob dito, babayaran po yung kanilang biyahe. sa bawat kilometro na kanila pong itatakbo. Part po yun ng kontrata. So malaki pong tulong ito sa ating mga kababayan na mga driver kasi po alam naman ho natin na mas mababa yung kinikita nila ngayon.
Jeepney drivers are entitled for an 11 pesos per kilometer financial aid, while bus drivers get 23 pesos and 10 centavos per kilometer. Payouts will automatically be sent directly to beneficiaries via Land Bank, GCash, or PayMaya. But to determine the distance traveled in the operation of the drivers, a mobile application should be downloaded in their smartphones. Drivers will receive a one-time financial aid amounting to 4,000 pesos upon completion of the registration for service contracting. With all these benefits, drivers are relieved and thankful for all the aid that the government provided.
Katulad doon namin, every other day ang biyahe, kikita kami 400, kinabukasan walang biyahe. Tapos bibiyahe din kinabukasan, kikita ng 300. Papasalamat kami kay Pangulo Duterte. Kahit na paano, nabibigyan kami ng biyaya.
Tuwang-tuwa kami dahil nabigyan kami ng ayuda. Matagal na namin hinihintay yan. Malaki pong sasalamat namin dito sa LTFRB, yung tulong nila. Malaki tulong to. Nabayaran din yung utang unti-unti.
The registration center for service contracting will serve drivers until November 29 from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. not only in Metro Manila but also in the cities of Cebu and Davao. At least 60,000 drivers are expected to register, and LTFRB plans to implement the program in other regions. But the agency reminds the drivers looking to register for the program to bring some corresponding documents as proof of their identity and service they provide. Drivers who will fail to participate in the week-long mass registration for service contracting may contact LTFRB's hotline number and may check further instructions from their social media account or website. Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Motorcycle Taxi Technical Working Group issued a provisional authority to 2 motorcycle taxi players to resume operation in Metro Manila. Angkas and Joyride were allowed to operate under the Extended Motorcycle Taxi Pilot Program until December 9, pending confirmation of compliance as they complete a couple of operational requirements set forth by the TWG and the National Task Force or NTF. These include the provision of insurance for both the rider and passenger in case of accidents, while mandatory use of thermal scanners is still being considered for implementation, awaiting approval from the NTF. Meanwhile, another motorcycle taxi player appeals to the Department of Transportation and the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board to also allow them to operate for their livelihood. But the DOTR Assistant Secretary Goddess Hope Libira clarifies that the resumption of operation is just the extension of the pilot study that was suspended due to the pandemic.
Yung mga ibang mga players na gustong sumali, ayan ay maa-accommodate na natin once magkaroon na ng bagong batas, no, na ipapasa ng Congress legalizing the operation of motorcycle taxis as a mode of public transport.
Security guards applying for permits and those seeking a license to own guns can now avail of the services at Camp Crame in Quezon City even during the weekend. Lea Ilagan will tell us why.
Philippine National Police Chief Police General de Bolsinas has ordered the Civil Security Group to extend its frontline services in the national headquarters to accommodate more clients. Sinas instructed Acting CSG Director, Police Brigadier General Rolando Hinanay, to decrease the influx of applicants for license to exercise security profession or LESP for private security, and the license to own and possess firearms or LTAP at the one-stop shop in Camp Crame by operating beyond their regular working days. Sinas adds they want to maximize their public service even during this time of pandemic. Hinanay announced that the CSG will accommodate LESP and LTAP clients even on Saturday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. while 8 a.m. to 12 noon during Sunday and holidays starting November 28 until December 13, 2020. Hinanay adds the scheduling scheme for clients will be based on an online queuing system to control and streamline the number of visitors. General Sinas also directed Hinanay to open the CSS Annex Office at the PTC for office designated for a smooth process of DI clearances. DI clearance is needed in applying LESP, neuropsychotest, and drug test for LTAP applicants. Sinas adds they want to lessen the 700 to 800 clients going to Camp Crame every day to apply for licenses to ensure they are following minimum health protocols. Aside from their office in Camp Crame, Sinas is also eyeing to open CSG extension offices in Eastern Police District, Northern Police District, and Southern Police District. Sinas also said that they are studying to put LTAF booths in some shopping malls in Metro Manila and printing hubs to the police regional offices. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Supreme Court will adopt a 4-day workweek scheme for all its officials and employees starting December 1. In an administrative circular issued by Supreme Court Chief Justice Diosdado Peralta, High Court employees will work 10 hours a day or from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. to complete the required 40 hours of work each week. The justices will decide the operation schedule of their offices, but all other High Court offices and services will still be open from Mondays to Fridays with at least 80% personnel attendance. The total number of employees in court offices will be divided into 5 groups, each comprising 20% of the total number of workers. Alternately, they will have to take 1 day leave during weekdays. The practice of flexible time and overtime work for employees will be canceled for the time being. Peralta said the observance of a 4-day work week is in line with the directive of the Civil Service Commission in October for implementation during the period of health emergency due to COVID-19 pandemic. The Chief Justice also required the heads of the Court of Appeals, Sandigan Bayan, Court of Tax Appeals, and all trial courts to prepare their guidelines for the work week schedule. The Office for Alternative Dispute Resolution, or OADR, encourages the public to resolve their dispute issues outside the court. Dante Amento explains why.
The Office for Alternative Dispute Resolution, or OADR, is an attached agency of the Department of Justice created in 2004 through Republic Act 9285. It has a mandate to promote, develop, and expand the use of Alternative Dispute Resolution System, or ADR, a process to resolve dispute or controversy outside the court by getting a mediator from accredited ADR providers or trained private individuals to act an arbitrator of the dispute.
They really have to be educated na, hey, nandyan lang sa kapitbahay mo yung pwede mong puntahan. It's the barangay captain, the lupon, pa? So, nandun lang. So, kailangan kung ano yung mas malapit.
Thus, the agency encourages the public to resolve their dispute issues within their barangays or train private individuals instead of going directly to the court. Trial courts may also delay the proceedings due to congestion of cases. Attorney Irene Alogok, the OADR Executive Director, says there will be confidentiality in their system for the parties as compared to courts where media networks have access to.
Ang tagal ng mga kaso natin sa korte, umaabot tayo ng ilang taon. But personally, we really believe that we can settle these cases out of court. That's why we have all the layers of ADR within our government.
All kinds of disputes can be resolved through ADR except for those labor code and criminal cases, changing of civil status, among others.
It's because people don't really know na po pwede, feeling ko. And a lot of people, of course, want to save money. Litigation costs a lot of money. So if there is an alternative way to settle the dispute without having to spend that much money and going through years of trouble.
Meanwhile, on December 2 to 4, the agency will conduct a national ADR convention to discuss ways to resolve different issues of dispute. It will be live via Facebook from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
For those watching us on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on the right side of your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook.
Leaders of the House of Representatives filed another bill pushing for a third Bayanihan law, this time amounting to 247 billion pesos. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why live. Vincent, go ahead.
Diego, as the economy is reeling from the continuous effect of the COVID-19 pandemic and the storms that ravaged the country, the economy needs a booster shot that will help it recover. That is why Representative Joey Salceda, chairman of House Ways and Means, said that they have filed House Bill 8059 or Bayanihan to Rebuild as One Act or Bayanihan 3. Under the bill, there will be a 247 billion pesos of provision to jumpstart the economy. The bill includes a provision of 20 billion pesos to procure vaccine and to create a vaccine committee. Salceda says it is imperative to address health needs.
Wala pa akong tiwala ang tao dahil nga po nasa kita pa po tayo ng pandemya. So we need to address the health concern if you want a meaningful recovery.
Under Bayanihan 3, 40 billion pesos will be for local government support fund for calamity recovery, 7 billion pesos for rent refinancing, eviction moratorium, condonation of agrarian reform loans, small business regulatory relief, jobs for displaced workers, medical assistance, and others.
Sa ngayon pong taon, mas maganda kung budgetan na natin yung mga pangangailangan na lumalabas na at habulin para sa akin yung iba po na mga masasabi natin hindi na cover ng Bayanihan 1 and 2, lalo-lalo na yung mga SMEs.
Diego Salceda believes that the bill will be passed in the next 2 weeks. That's the latest live. Back to you, Diego.
Thank you for that live report, Vincent Arboleda.
Following the investigation in the House of Representatives over the massive flooding in several parts of Luzon due to the series of typhoons, the Senate Committee on Public Works conducted its hearing on the matter. During the hearing, the Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, presented its various flood projects to avoid what happened in Marikina, Rizal, and Cagayan Valley. The DPWH said they are eyeing to finish the Pasig-Marikina River Channel Improvement Project in 2026, which is currently on its fourth phase. This include the construction of flood walls, the Mangahan Control Gate structure, Cainta Flood Gate, and Taytay Sluice Gate. Through a computer simulation imagery, the DPWH showed the effects of the project in mitigating floods should it be completed.
Yung pula po, this signifies yung tubig baka o yung spreading out of the inundation into the neighboring communities. 2,291,000 people will be affected, but with the project in place, kung atin po magagawa ito in the next 6 or 7 years, makumpleto po natin, significantly that the flood area will be reduced into 5.6 kilometers.
Meanwhile, the 8-kilometer-long Parañaque Spillway project is expected to begin in 2022. According to the DPWH, the 67 billion peso project is expected to protect Muntinlupa, Bacoor, and the western portion of Laguna de Bay from massive flooding. The DPWH said the Japan International Coordinating Agency, or JICA, has already expressed support in funding the project. Meanwhile, for Cagayan River, the agency said they are now planning for the construction of 450-kilometer dike systems, cut-off channels, riverbank protection, and 6 additional dams. For architect and urban planner June Palafox, he welcomes the current progress of the DPWH, but he noted that there is lacking in the implementation of flood projects. He adds the government must also focus on green infrastructure such as tree planting and urban agriculture as a holistic approach in addressing the flood problem in the country. Palafox also noted that climate change and the lack of open spaces contribute to the worsening of floods nowadays.
Hindi ho kulang sa pagpaplano, kulang ho sa implementation at sa continuity. Na-propose when I was 22 years old, ginagawa na ngayon. 70 years old na ngayon. At least, finally, may ginagawa na. Hindi lang po hard infrastructure. The build, we should also include plant, and hindi lang dapat build back better. Maybe build back better, verde. If we do nothing again after this pandemic, I think some of our cities will no longer be livable.
For his part, Senator Francis Pangilinan proposes to create an integrated water resource planning and management council to be headed by a cabinet member who will ensure proper coordination among government agencies tasked for water management, including the release of water from dams.
Sa ngayon, we're looking at perhaps CABSEC Carlo Nograles, who can coordinate the Secretary of Public Works, the Secretary of Agriculture, the NIA Administrator, the DNR Secretary in terms of watershed management. At least mayroong coordination yung nag-iisip ng flood control at nag-iisip ng irrigation at yung nag-iisip ng potable water, nagkakaroon sila ng pag-uusap. Hindi yung kanya-kanya.
And for the news abroad, here's Kath Dumaraos reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand.
Good evening, William. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden unveiled a group of experienced foreign policy cabinet members pick as he prepares to lead the Americans next year. Sonny Cos will tell us why.
Democratic President-elect Joe Biden began naming members of his cabinet, appointing experienced foreign policy and national security experts to key posts as he declared that America is back and ready to lead the world, not retreat from it. If confirmed by the U.S. Senate, Anthony Blinken will be the next Secretary of State, Senator John Kerry as climate change envoy, and Avril Haines will be the first female director of national intelligence. In a speech, Biden highlighted the importance of rebuilding alliances as well as dealing with the coronavirus and climate change. He also said that the world and American allies are eager for it to return as a global leader in the Pacific and beyond. On Tuesday, incumbent President Donald Trump granted the former VP access to presidential intelligence briefings, meaning he will now receive information on international threats and developments. His transition team will also have access to key government officials and millions of dollars in funds as he prepares to take over the White House next year. Trump on his part said that he will not concede anytime soon, even as his numerous lawsuits casting doubts on the legitimacy of the election and alleging mass voter fraud fall apart after key battleground states such as Nevada, Michigan, Georgia, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania certified their election results in favor of Biden. Sonicos, UNTV News and Rescue, USA. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Thailand faced criticism from international rights groups on Wednesday for bringing charges of insulting the monarchy against protest leaders who have challenged King Maha Vajiralongkorn as well as the government. A police official said a total of 15 protest leaders had been summoned to acknowledge lèse majesty charges over comments made at protests in September and October when they spoke about the king's behavior, lifestyle, and spending. Human rights lawyer Amal Clooney, in a statement from the Clooney Foundation for Justice, said no one should be arrested or imprisoned merely for criticizing public officials or a system of government. The Paris-based International Federation for Human Rights said lèse-majesté must not be used to criminalize pro-democracy protest leaders and participants. Responding to the criticism, government spokeswoman Rachada Dinadirek said the government has been open-minded to rights and freedoms despite many imprudent expressions which offend the majority. The government must use its authorized powers. The royal insult laws have not been used since 2018, and Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha said in June that they were not being used at the request of the king. Since July, protesters have been calling for the removal of Prayut, a former junta leader. They also demand a new constitution and curbs on the king's powers. France will begin to ease its strict coronavirus restrictions by replacing lockdowns with a nationwide curfew after it passes its second wave of COVID-19 infections. Marvy Delfin will give us the details live. Go ahead, Marvy.
Kath, in a televised address last night, French President Emmanuel Macron declared that the country had passed the peak of the second wave of virus infections. And so Macron announced a three-stage easing of the country's month-long lockdown, beginning this weekend with the reopening of non-essential businesses such as hairdressers and clothing stores, which will have to observe strict distancing rules and close at 9 p.m. Churches and some cultural venues will also be able to reopen from the 1st of December with a maximum of 30 visitors, and people would be able to exercise within a 20-kilometer radius of their homes and for up to 3 hours rather than the current 1-kilometer, 1-hour limits. Providing infection numbers have fallen to about 5,000 per day, the lockdowns will be formally lifted on December 15, allowing holiday travel. Although a nationwide 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. curfew would be in force except on the 24th and 31st of December, and all private festive gatherings would be expected to observe physical distancing rules. A third stage would begin from January 20 next year, when bars, restaurants, and clubs should be able to reopen, as well as universities. The French president said, "We have slowed the spread of the virus, but it is still very much present." He emphasized we must do everything in our power to avoid a third wave and a third lockdown. The recent news of successful vaccine trials offered a glimmer of hope, and France aims to begin vaccinations against COVID-19 at the end of December or at the beginning of January, starting with the elderly and the most vulnerable. French COVID-19 infection rates have dropped sharply in the past week since the government imposed the lockdowns on October 30. France's infection rate per 100,000 people is now less than a third of what it was when November began, and the number of people in hospitals and intensive care has been trending downward for a week. However, France continues to report hundreds of COVID-19 related deaths each day. Just minutes before Macron's address, the country's COVID-19 death toll passed 50,000, while its infection rate of over 2.1 million remains the highest in Europe. Kath?
Thank you, Marvy, for that live report. Meanwhile, in a landmark victory against period poverty, Scotland has become the first nation to allow free and universal access to menstrual products, including tampons and pads, in public facilities. Earl Briones will tell us why live. Earl?
The Scottish Parliament unanimously passed the Period Products or Free Provision Scotland Bill, which is designed to create a legal obligation for the government to ensure sanitary products are free and accessible for all who menstruate, including tampons and pads in public facilities nationwide. According to estimates from the Scottish Government, the cost to implement the legislation will be about £24 million annually, or almost $32 million. The bill was introduced by Scottish Parliament member Monica Lennon. Lennon's aim was to tackle period poverty and aid those who need menstrual products but struggle to afford them.
Thanks to this amazing grassroots activism, universal access to free period products has become a mainstream campaign that every political party in this chamber has embraced. We all agree that no one should have to worry about where their next tampon pads or reusable is coming from. We are on the brink of passing this world-leading legislation. Scotland will not be the last country to consign period poverty to history, but we have the chance to be the first.
A survey conducted by Young Scott in 2018 with over 2,000 respondents revealed that almost 54% of the participants had issues with affordability of the products, while 1 out of 4 respondents struggled to access the product at schools and universities. The average monthly cost for tampons and pads is about 8 pounds or 500 pesos. The new law was praised by a number of equality and women's rights groups, as well as politicians from across the parties represented in the Scottish Parliament. Scotland's 32 councils will decide on practical arrangement on the nationwide rollout of the scheme. The scheme needs to be put into operation within 2 years of the legislation becoming law. Kat?
Thank you, Urbrionis, for that report. And those are the reasons behind the news here in Thailand and in other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Kath Tumaraos, live from Bangkok, Thailand.
And those are the reasons behind the news, November 25, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.